Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lawyers Who Stream, Season 2, Episode 4. Talking all about LLMs tonight. With me are two guests, Tasha Stansbury and Ainsley Daub. Am I pronouncing that right, Daub?
Yeah, it was
Daub?
close.
Okay,
Yeah.
close, Daub. Tasha Stansbury and Ainsley Daub. This show is streamed and recorded on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is today inhabited by many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and has been since before settlers arrived on Turtle Island. Toronto, where I live myself and I'm recording this show, is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I'm going to introduce my guests, starting with Ainsley. Ainsley, oh, and let me just say off the bat, nothing against any of the other guests. Everyone is awesome and accomplished in their own way, but you two have written, I think, a couple of the coolest bios I've ever seen. You seem very cool. Um, Ainsley attended Carleton University, where she received her Bachelor of Arts degree in Criminology and Criminal Justice, with a specialization in law in 2017. After graduating, Ainsley worked with the U of T OISE courses, helping teach high school students how to teach law. Ainsley then took a career abroad. She attended the University of Kent Law School, receiving her LLB degree in 2020. After having the experience of a COVID grad, I think a lot of us have been through that recently. Ainsley enrolled in the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law, receiving her LLM degree in 2021. Ainsley now works for Farrell LLP as an immigration case manager while working through the NCA licensing process. While not working in immigration, Ainsley enjoys bartending on weekends at a surf punk bar, embroidering, and hanging out with her dog, Earl. I'll go to Tasha. Tasha is a PhD student at the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law, focusing on food law and human rights in Canada. She completed her LLM last year at U Ottawa on the subject of climate induced migration, and before that, her JD at the University of Windsor. She has a wide range of interests and is known among her friends for always trying to do as many things as possible at the same time. I can definitely attest to that. Her non professional interests include lifting heavy stuff, being out in nature, and hanging with her dog and two cats. She's also really into Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons. So, welcome both of you. It's great to have you on. Great to have the three of us all hanging out virtually in the same room, at least. Yeah, well, so we'll start with Ainsley. When you decided to sign up for LLM, was it purely circumstances of the pandemic, or did you intend to sort of pursue an LLM at some point, anyways?
I kind of thought about doing it here and there before I really made the decision, but what really kind of increased that was all of the licensing process was like completely on hold when I finished my degree.
Mhm.
And I was like, what do I do? Like, do I just sit in limbo for who knows how long and like couldn't work because at that point everything was shut. Couldn't do my licensing. And I was like, well, universities never stopped. So there's always university. So
Mhm.
I decided why not one more degree? And a couple of schools were still accepting applications. I decided super duper late. Like I think I decided like end of April, early May, and like try to get that application out like as soon as possible. So I just things just kind of aligned in that way, and I'm not mad about it.
Mm. Tasha, how about you? I believe that you had committed to going to University of Ottawa before COVID-19 broke out. Is that right?
Yeah, it was kind of at the same time. I was actually going to article. I had a summer job with legal aid, and because of the legal aid funding cuts,
Mm.
the first thing to go was the articling funding. So I unfortunately kind of lost that. And honestly, just the idea of going through the application process again for articling was just like really overwhelming with where I was in the moment. It actually ended up lining up pretty perfectly. So I think I applied for U Ottawa, yeah, like before COVID started. And I got the acceptance kind of at the same time that everything hit. And I hadn't realized at the time that I probably could have done my whole degree remotely. So I moved to Ottawa, and I'm still here.
There we
It was
are.
so it was kind of a combination of the two. I always wanted to like do an LLM, do a master's, continue my education. That's kind of always been the track I've been on.
Mhm.
I thought it would take a little bit longer than it has, but it seemed like, a good time to do it. Kind of similar thing to Ainsley, like university is always there. I'm not just going to sit for a year and just like wait for the right job to come along. I always have to be doing something. So it just felt like a good thing to do.
Yeah, I thought this would be an interesting conversation, because the three of us all met, of course. Well, Tasha, you and I knew each other before this, but we all met with each other at the LLM program in the University of Ottawa, and we all followed fairly different paths to get there and had our own kind of different reasons to go. But all of us did end up there kind of as a way to further our education in our legal careers because something had sort of disrupted the path we were on. Like for me, it was coming home from abroad. COVID hits, job market's in shambles, so looking for something to occupy my time for a year. That's kind of my story. Ainsley, you mentioned that your licensing process was on hold for the. You are an NCA candidate lawyer. Can you talk a little bit about that process and whether you're able to do anything during your LLM, and how is that going right now?
To be honest, I kind of put it on pause during the LLM, which is fine. Like I'm not in a huge hurry to get through it. Like obviously I want to get it over with, to be fair, but like it's they were in such like administrative limbo as well, just because their offices were shut. They weren't processing applications. So I was like, you know what, I might as well just go along with this. I'll do my LLM. I'll apply. And from what I've kind of seen online, they're still taking 8 to 10 months to process like applications. So
Mm.
eventually I'll get that process started. I'm fairly comfortable with where I'm at with everything. Like I like both of my jobs, and I'm enjoying this process. Like eventually I'll get to it, and like hopefully sooner than later, but I'm not going to stress about the process.
And Tasha, you're going through the traditional licensing, or you're in the middle of a traditional licensing process, not yet called to the bar. Where are you sort of at in that process? Did you consider just staying in academia, or are you still trying to pursue practice?
Yeah, so I definitely considered just staying in academia, but then I kind of realized that a lot of the job postings that I was looking at, they were saying like being in good standing with the LSO and like having a license is an asset. So I was like, well, if it's an asset, it's an asset, right?
Hmm.
Um, Plus, like I wouldn't mind having a job. Yeah, it was kind of a last minute decision. I had missed all of the like formal recruit deadlines, but I found a posting for an articling position with a family law firm here in Ottawa that had a part-time option, which works great for me because I'm still doing 1,000 other things,
Hmm.
doing my PhD, looking at maybe co-teaching next semester. So, I've got a lot on my plate already. So having that option to do it part-time, I'm okay with it taking a little bit longer. So that ended up working out, and I'm starting that in January, scheduled to write the bar in March.
Awesome.
And then I'm doing my comps for my PhD in June. So everything's kind of just happening at the same time.
You did say that you like doing everything all at once.
I did, yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about your PhD, what you're doing for that at the moment,
Yeah,
what made you decide
sure.
to go into it?
What made me decide to go into it? Well, I guess I'll start there. Yeah. So I was a TA during my LLM, and I happened to be paired with a wonderful professor who's a torts law prof who normally doesn't teach the tort section that takes a TA. So I just super lucked out. And she also teaches food law, and food justice is something that I concentrated on pretty heavily in my undergraduate degree. I've been on a couple of expert panels about food waste and stuff like that. So it's always been near and dear to my heart, but I kind of put it aside during law school because Windsor didn't really have anything in that realm, or not too much anyway. There was one class that I took anyway. So I ended up connecting with that professor, taking her food law class, and then it just kind of occurred to me that I'm already in academia. I'm on the road, right?
Mm.
I have this great professor who has supervised PhD students before. So I called her up and I asked her, I was like, hey, if I apply for a PhD, will you supervise me? And she's like, yes, absolutely. I would love to have you. And of course, once your supervisor says that they would love to have you, you can't back out at that point.
Of course.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm locked in. So I applied, I got in. So I just started this past September. Right now, all I've done is the mandatory PhD research methodology course. I just handed in my last paper yesterday for that. So that's very exciting. And because I'm working next semester, I'm not going to be taking a class. Normally you have to take another class, but I'll just be working on my comps kind of independently and working part-time.
And Ainsley, how about you? You opted not to continue at the school, but rather go right back into the job market. What made you make that decision?
I'd thought about more academia. It kind of is always there. Like kind of when you finish the degree, you're kind of like, I'm done. I've had it. Tasha, I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you went straight into it, but everything all at once, I guess, is the way to do it for you. But kind of once I'd finished, I was like, I am done. And I kind of just happened upon, I had a friend who posted an Instagram story and was like, is anyone looking for a legal job? And I was like, absolutely, me. Yes, 100%. I am ready to work. And she worked at like a headhunting firm for a while that does like mostly like firms in Toronto, and like kind of more administrative positions, like not legal positions because I'm not licensed yet. So I was like, this will be perfect. And it just kind of happened that I, within like a week after graduate or a week after finishing my LLM, had a job. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. I didn't think that through either. It would have been kind of nice to have like a bit of a break, but it's great. I like what I do. It's a great learning opportunity, especially as someone who did law school abroad and, you know, kind of all my networking was abroad. This has been an excellent opportunity for me to learn and have like firm experience. So I've really had a great time.
Awesome. Super happy to hear that. Gonna take us back a bit to the beginnings of the LLM and actually doing the LLM. So you can't ignore the process, or you can't ignore the context, rather, that all of us did a full degree entirely remotely during COVID. Well, Tasha, I think you might have set foot on campus a few times, but I've never been to campus personally. Ainsley, I don't think you've ever been to campus either. Why don't you talk a little bit about sort of the challenges? Was there anything that you expected that you didn't really get out of school that you wish you had? Talk a little bit about sort of starting out doing the LLM remotely. And Ainsley, you can begin.
Cool. Yeah. Absolutely. I miss the like physical camaraderie of school, I think, of university and going and like making friends. Like, not that we didn't make friends, because obviously we're all here. It feels like I'm in class again,
Mhm.
being on Zoom. But like more or less just like the, you know, after class being like, hey, let's go to the coffee shop, let's go, you know, let's go grab a drink, let's go do whatever. Like just the like doing things with your like your cohort or your classmates, or like I missed that. But what I really appreciated is I found that my professors worked so hard at making the classes enjoyable
Mhm.
and making them fun and making them like, as awful as online school is, they tried so hard to make it a good time and make us want to come. Like, I don't know necessarily across the board for you guys, but I had such a great experience with like all my professors and the class, like the classes that I took.
Hmm. Tasha, how about you? How'd you find the experience?
Yeah. So yeah, I actually set foot on campus for the first time like a couple months into my PhD. So yeah, I did the whole degree without ever going. But it was kind of a mixed bag for me, I think, similar to what Ainsley said. I mean, you just had the Golden Girls on last week. That was my group of friends in my JD. So, you know, it was like weekly get togethers, always checking in with each other between classes, having a bunch of classes together. And you form that like core group of friends that I didn't really get out of my LLM. Honestly, sorry, the dog's scratching. I feel like part of like the only reason that I made friends at all during my LLM is because I already knew Teddy, and Teddy was interested in networking, and I was just kind of like, I just want to get through this. Teddy was like, you should make an effort. So yeah, and like that's basically how I ended up connecting with you, Ainsley, too.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, so yeah, like I kind of miss that like the ease of making friends, I guess. But what I did get out of it a lot is that I found I was a lot more efficient with my time. So a lot of times I would like, because I like want to be doing stuff, I always want to be moving around with my body too. I find that sometimes when I'm sitting in class, I get a lot of like anxious energy, or just like I get restless. So having a class on Zoom and like doing the dishes or, you know, cleaning up after the cat, so efficient. And it was just like, it ticked all my boxes. Like, I don't have to talk to anyone. I'm learning stuff. I'm getting stuff done. I'm moving around. It was super, super great. The part where that gets hard is like when some profs have like cameras on policies where you have to like sit in front of a camera for like 3 hours, and that that like drains me more than I can possibly describe. I'm sure we've all like experienced the Zoom exhaustion, but
Big time.
it's just a whole other level of like, I read somewhere that it's different than being in person because it feels like everybody's making eye contact with each other. Like everybody's looking at you all the time. So it's not like
It's like it feels like there's nowhere to hide, you know?
exactly. It's not like,
Yeah.
you can see where the prof is looking in class, so they're looking the other way and you can like go get something from your bag or something. It's totally different experience. So yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag for me, but it also kind of happened at a time in my life where there's been a lot of like transitions happening anyway. So it felt like something that I could do at the same time while everything else was chaos. So there was that at least.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, it was kind of a mixed bag for me too. The fact that I could do it all remotely probably contributed to the fact that I did the LLM at all. I mean, if I just got home, I've got a new place. If I had had to move to Ottawa at that time, like I don't think I would have started the LLM. But the fact that I could do it from home and I had this great program I was going into, I was like, yeah, of course I'll do it. I feel you on the Zoom fatigue. I found that after, I did. I do remember telling Tasha to make a bit of an effort to make friends, but I also gave up on that pretty quickly because, I tried to do virtual drinks or like virtual get-togethers, and I think those people got burnt out on those pretty quickly. So yeah, we're really finding the limits on sort of digital socialization, I guess, especially when you also have to be on camera for your classes. But yeah, like Tasha said, the able to do things more efficiently from home and sort of arrange your time. That was also a bit of a curse for me because it led me to pursue a whole bunch of different things that I simply did not have time for. Um, and that led to a little bit of burnout. So it was harder to gauge kind of my own limits, I think, when I was removed from the context of leaving my house
Oh
every
wow,
day,
yeah.
which is a little rough. But yeah, and how did everyone find the learning experience? I know that I learned a ton. I learned like new ways to find knowledge and record it and write my thoughts out. So I'm just wondering what each of you found that you took away from your LLM that you will bring into whatever future jobs you may have. And Tash, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think my research and writing skills improved a lot, which is great for my PhD. Um, I was, challenged to write kind of longer papers for the first time. I did a lot of paper writing in my JD, but it was all like, 20-page papers. And now at the grad level, they are asking for 35 to 40-page papers. And then the LLM was 50 to 60 pages for the major research paper. So I feel like I've been able to kind of like push myself to figure out what else I can say. Because usually, during my JD, I'd be like struggling to make 20 pages, being like, I have nothing more to say at this point. And when I handed in my paper yesterday, I had edited down 3 pages because I've written too much. So it's, not the worst problem to have when you're writing. Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. I definitely have not improved my social skills at all. Although my networking has been okay, but I feel like it's because people are getting more flexible in how they network now. I feel like the world has kind of changed in a way that like accidentally accommodates people who are not really interested in like going out all the time. And like I don't drink, for example, so the culture of like drinking in law has just not been a problem for me for the past year. I've been able to network without the expectation that I'm going to go to a cocktail party or whatever. So that's been awesome. Yeah, I feel like just like shifted perspectives on my own abilities. Like I feel like my confidence is better. And yeah,
Mhm.
tinkle in there.
Ainsley, how about you? What have you brought out of the experience?
I can definitely relate when you say like the length of papers. That is something they don't warn you about going into grad school. Is you like
Oh.
you finish your undergrad and like your 12-page papers, which you think are so long then, and then you go through law school and you do like a couple 20 25-page papers, and you get to grad school and they're like, yep, you have 2 assignments this term. One's a 40-page paper, and you're like, oh,
Cool.
Mm.
okay. Yeah, exactly. And I was not expecting that. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I think just definitely learning how to like write a 40-page paper, because that's very different than writing even a 20-page paper, because it's so much longer. Like and that you have to be able to like make it coherent from front to back without forgetting, the assignment along the way, which is so easy to do in a long paper. And sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
building the structure, the scaffolding to actually make a coherent paper from beginning to end is a huge challenge when you're dealing with that many pages, because you can't just maintain one idea the whole way through. You have to like juggle sort of multiple threads, right, to ultimately fulfill your
Oh, I
thesis. And
had
it
sticky
was
notes across my like wall. I had like a
I've seen
sticky
them. It
note.
was very like, Charlie Day and Always
Yeah.
Sunny kind
Oh,
of stuff.
100% Pepe
Uh-huh.
Sylvia all the way on my wall.
Yeah.
But like it was, yeah. And I remember talking to my supervisor because like throughout like my school, my like academic journey has always been chaotic. I'm a chaotic student. It's how I work.
Mm.
And I remember asking my supervisor, I was like, hey, like, do you want me to write you an outline for this paper? Like, I've never done that before. And he was like, I've never written an outline either. And I was like, oh, okay, okay, good. Okay, that's
I'm
perfect.
usually
Then I
forced
won't.
usually forced to write an outline and then abandon it, so I've stopped
Yeah.
doing that. By the way, anyone who's watching right now in the chat, if you have any questions about enrolling in LLMs or any questions about master's programs, just give us a shout. I'll read it out to our guests. So how did you find working with your supervisors? Was it like a very close relationship? Was it kind of like, just like checking in once in a while? Did you think that your choice of supervisor really made a difference in what you ended up writing about? And Ainsley, I'll start with you.
My supervisor was assigned when I was accepted.
Hmm.
Um, and I had a great time. Like I said, I mean, it was perfect right off the bat when he was like, I don't expect you to do an outline. And I was like, perfect. Then I won't. And we kind of just had a very, I'd say pretty low key. Like he was always there. Like we had quite a few like Zoom calls, quite a few phone calls. And we were more or less in contact closer to the end, like when there was like a lot of editing and
Hmm.
revision and stuff.
Right, right.
And he was also very understanding when my entire paper deleted itself a week before it was due.
That's right. Yeah.
But I mean, that's we had a really he was very, very helpful. He had a lot of good ideas. This isn't like I did my LLM in victim impact statements, and that wasn't an area he was super familiar with. But we used to get on like these like spirals of like just stuff, and I'd be like, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. He's like, that's really interesting. I never thought of that. And then he'd be like, but what about? And we would just kind of get into this like I don't even know, like chaos bubble of like thoughts and ideas, and which kind of helped with the like Pepe Sylvia wall. So eventually I organized them all into like a more coherent stream of less chaotic thoughts. But yeah, it was a really, really good relationship, and having someone that kind of was that's like supportive in the way that I needed, I think, along the way. Like kind of like there when I needed them, but wasn't too, like, hey, this is what you should be doing now, kind of thing. Like very let me to do it all on my own.
Awesome. And Tasha, you sort of talked about your current supervisor a bit earlier. Do you want to talk about your experience with the supervisor during your master's?
Yeah, basically the opposite of Ainsley's experience. So I picked my supervisor. I emailed him beforehand asking him to be my supervisor. He said, yes, I'll be your supervisor, but I'm actually on leave. So I'll bring this other person in and we're both going to be your supervisor. And I was like, cool. Okay. I guess. And that proved to be pretty confusing kind of right off the bat. They had very different schedules and were working on very different schedules in terms of like getting info back to me. They had decided at some point that they were going to kind of like alternate giving me feedback on my drafts, and like no one had told me that. So I was, anxiously waiting for my second supervisor to answer about my draft. And then, it eventually kind of clarified itself. And then one of them went on vacation over the period of time when the paper was due. And I had this whole like freak out about how, maybe like I thought I would have to finish the paper before they went on vacation, which was like 2 weeks before the deadline. I was absolutely not going to do that.
Yep.
And then, so I had to do a whole bunch of stuff to like get an extension and make sure that, anyway, I didn't feel like they communicated with me very clearly. The supervisor that I picked was pretty helpful. Like he sent me a couple of papers that I ended up citing in my major research paper. And their feedback when I did get it was very helpful. But just like the delays and the miscommunications. And I feel like they were both really busy. And I think they had decided, since they both didn't fully have the time to take on a student, they could kind of split it up and then both take half the time. But then like neither of them, I don't think either of them actually did that. So it was a lot of me emailing, like having not received a response, being like, hi, did you get this? Hi, I need this back. Like, what is the deadline for this? Like, when you need this back by, and it ended up being fine at the end after like a lot of a lot of anxiety, a lot of like
you got there
struggling to communicate. Yeah, we did get there. But I don't know if I like would like wish that it happened differently, because I definitely learned a lot about like following up, and the importance of like at a certain point you have to stop being polite and like stay polite, but like you have to stop worrying about like, oh, what if they think I'm bugging them?
Yeah, there's sort of an element of self-advocacy and
Yeah,
keeping your supervisor accountable there, right?
yeah, for sure. So I had to get real comfortable with that real quick.
Yeah.
So
sounds like chaos in a very different way. Before we wrap up, one question I did want to get to tonight, just as a helpful thing for anyone who might be watching this or the archive, if you were to give someone some advice on before applying for an LLM, what would you tell them about what an LLM will be good for, what factors to consider, what's like the most important piece of advice you would give someone before they decide to accept an offer to do an LLM? Natasha, I'll start with you.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, in terms of like what an LLM is good for, if you want to teach, it's great. Even if you just want to be like a part-time professor. A lot of people who have a lot of like authority in the law, like practicing lawyers, have LLMs, and that's kind of what drew me to it initially. I noticed that a lot of the really high-profile lawyers that I admired also had LLMs. In terms of advice, I think that I would probably say like don't do what we all did. I'm sorry, everyone, but like
no, it's fine. It was circumstances, But,
no, I know.
We've all done it. It's done now.
It's done. It's fine. But like, think about it and think about like your intention with it, and don't just go into it because you don't know what else to do. Because I keep doing that and I keep regretting it. Like, I don't regret doing my LLM, of course, but I feel like I wasn't prepared. I feel like it wasn't the right stage in my life. Now I'm feeling like I really I want to work because I miss working with clients. I would say definitely like figure out for sure what you want from it and be ready to commit to that and be ready to have it be your life for a certain period of time. Especially that like month before the deadline where everything is like writing drafts, sending drafts, receiving feedback. Oh my God, there's 20,000 comments on this paper. I will never get this done. And you sit for like 14 hours a day for like 5 days in a row, just writing. I never thought I could do that. And I did it very much out of necessity. Planning your life around that is really difficult. So make sure that you actually want to do it. And this applies for people going into law school too. Make sure you want to do it before you do it for the right reasons.
Yeah, be intentional and be committed. I think that's really good advice.
For sure.
Ainsley, how about you?
Definitely. I think just kind of, they don't do a very good job. And I think I did touch on this before, of like being realistic with what is expected of you. And like, it was a lot like online. I'm sure it's a lot in person as well, but like the expectations aren't really there when you apply. Like you just kind of think, oh yeah, like I have to, I've got some classes to do. I have to write a paper, but you don't really realize how much that is until you get into it. So definitely I agree with you, like being intentional and in why you're doing it. Like, it's not really just like a fun time. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't know about you guys, but grad school was a lot easier than law school.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But like, because it's so different, like it's a lot more chill in terms of like the amount of time you have, because you only take so many classes a term. Like you're not doing 5 courses per term, but the expectations are very different.
For sure.
So I think, expectation and like just know what you expect and know what's expected of you from the program before you really commit to it.
Yeah. Talk to a student in your program. Like
I was about to say, make contact with us, because I didn't talk to any LLM students before.
I didn't either.
I couldn't even find anyone. It was just it all happened so fast. Yeah, so that's really great advice. I'd like to thank both of you for coming on. It's been a great conversation. Thank you to everyone watching. Next week, I will try to run a stream. I'm going to be house sitting at a different place, so it may or may not happen. If I don't, see everyone in the new year. Got lots more subjects and guests planned. Maybe actually try to like do a bit of put together a bit of a schedule for the next few months if I can. But if anyone, as usual, if anyone is interested in coming on or have something that they want to talk about with a guest, let me know. Shoot me a message on Twitter. DMs are open. And yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.